The number of accredited veterinary schools or colleges in the U.S. is less than 50, which can make getting into a program very competitive. Many of our guests here on the Paul Report come from the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine. So we decided to put the spotlight on that academic unit and find out what it takes to get into and graduate from vet school. The Paul Report starts now.
The Paul Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paul Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Paul Report. I am your host, Kelly Goodwin, and today we're talking with a first-time guest to the Paul Report, and we're glad to have Dr. Sara Connolly from the University of Illinois joining us today. So, Dr. Connolly, thank you. And as we do with all first-time guests, we put you on the spot, and you know, the first question's always the easiest, could be the hardest, but tell us about you and your background and your position at the University of Illinois.
Sure. So I'm originally from Hammond, Indiana, so from the Midwest. I was first interested in marine biology when I went to college. I did my undergraduate degree in biology at the University of Miami, but halfway through I decided the only part of that I was interested in was the animals. And so I thought, okay, well now what am I going to do since I don't want to do marine biology? And I thought I really still love science, I love animals. Veterinary medicine seemed like the best option for me, so started to think about veterinary school. Came back to Purdue University as my in-state school to go to veterinary school, loved it. Graduated in 2006, went into a residency in clinical pathology, so I don't practice. I sit behind a microscope a lot of the time looking at cells to make diagnoses for patients that other people are seeing. And now I'm at the University of Illinois, and I have a couple roles there. So one is with our academic student affairs office as the assistant dean for student success, and then I'm also a clinical assistant professor in clinical pathology.
Well, over the years, hosting the Paul Report show, I tell you what, our partnership with the University of Illinois has just grown. And so many of the doctors and other specialists have joined us here on the program, so I thought it was only fitting to maybe talk about what it takes to become a veterinarian and to pursue that profession. And so what better place to do it than on the Paul Report. So tell us about, you know, the College of Veterinary Medicine is a large unit within the U of I system. Tell us about the college, the supporting service units, like the veterinary teaching hospital, and some of the other areas within the college itself.
Sure. So the College of Veterinary Medicine admitted its first class in 1948, so that's how long we've been around. Producing veterinarians for the community. We have 3 academic departments, so comparative biosciences, pathobiology, and then veterinary clinical medicine. And then we have our 2 service units. So you mentioned the veterinary teaching hospital, and then we also have the veterinary diagnostic laboratory.
What are the benefits that you would say to become an Illinois a veterinary student? You know, there's a lot. And when you look at the website, like you just kind of explains the different areas, there is so much.
I think one of the main things in terms of what separates our veterinary education at Illinois from a veterinary education at other colleges is that we get students involved in clinical rotations during the first year. of their curriculum. So our curriculum is kind of set up on a quarter system, and one quarter in first and second year, the students go through rotations in the hospital, as well as in our clinical skills learning center. So really learning those hands-on skills that it takes to be a veterinarian, and that doesn't happen at all colleges. So really show students, gets them out of the classroom and shows them what they're going to be doing as a veterinarian.
What would you say, or how would you describe the ideal veterinary student candidate? And how do I know that a career in veterinary medicine is for me?
So really, I think we're looking for well-rounded students, students who are strong academically, but also are involved in maybe organizations at their college. They're taking on leadership roles. So it really shows that they have the ability to work with others, have good time management skills as well. And then to learn, is being a veterinarian right for you? That's going to take time being with a veterinarian in their practice, seeing really what they do every day, because it is, people who are veterinarians are lovers of animals, but it's so much more than that, and you really do need to be there in a clinic working next to a veterinarian to see what it's all about.
I was just going to say, is it always the ideal student is the one that knows from a very young age that they want to be a doctor, lawyer, teacher, or a vet? Is it always those students, or is it other students that just kind of evolve and learn more about the actual profession that decide, maybe this is for me?
I think it's a little bit of both, and hopefully it's not someone who is just from a young age, since I didn't decide until I was probably 20, 21. That is what I wanted to do. I think some people start definitely at a young age, but others evolve. We definitely have students come in each year that are second career students who do very well because they really know that this is what they want to do. So it's students from many, many different backgrounds and who have just made the decision in different parts of their life.
This whole episode, as we mentioned early on, is dedicated to talking about vet school and getting into vet school and what's it going to take. So let's start there. What are some of the prerequisites that a person would need? What are the standards for admission for students out there looking?
Okay. So we have two different kind of pathways to admittance through our college. I'm going to talk about the one that's more common, just because the second one is a little bit more complicated, and it's one that fewer students would take, I guess. So our main pathway is for students who will get a Bachelor's of Science or Bachelor's of Arts degree, so complete their undergraduate education, and then their prerequisites are science-based prerequisites. So 8 semesters of biological sciences with labs, 16 semester hours of chemistry with labs, and that's going to include inorganic, organic chemistry, and biochemistry, and then 8 hours of physics with laboratories.
Is it common, uncommon, because you said a bachelor's degree, is it somebody that has goes through a 2-year program, or would they be on the right track, or do you really?
Potentially. So that they could possibly come in through that second track. That's going to require just a lot of different courses that they're going to have to meet. It's more than just those biological, the science-based courses. We do see students who do an associate's degree and then maybe transfer to a college where they can get finish a bachelor's degree and then come in.
How competitive is the applicant pool? And you're probably very close to that. You see a lot of those applications come in. So very competitive. We mentioned earlier in the show that there are less than 50 accredited colleges of veterinary medicine in the U.S. I would have to think that the competition out there is strong.
It is. So another kind of prerequisite to think about is students need to have a cumulative GPA and a science GPA of 3.0. Those are requirements. And all The requisite classes need to have a grade of a C- or better. Now, I would say for kind of our more recent classes, their overall GPAs have been around 3.5 and science around 3.6. So usually they're a little bit higher than our just requirement. And last year we had just over 2,000 applications to our newest class, so it would be the class of 2026, and we admitted 150 students.
That's it?
Yes.
Wow. So
So
repeat that. So you had over 2,000 applications?
Yes, just over 2,000 total applications, and our class size will be 150.
Why? I mean, is it just because it's so specialized that you want to give those 150 students the attention that they need, provide the labs? Why the smaller number?
Well, actually, that's an increase.
Really?
Yes. So it was just the class right before that was 130. So we've increased it by 20 students. But it is to try to keep that student to faculty ratio at a certain level, to make sure there's space in the classrooms, that in the laboratory sessions students are getting the attention that they need. Also based on like the size of our teaching hospital, how many students can we have in there rotating through the different services? Because we've increased the size of our teaching hospital, that's helped with that. But it's all to make sure the students really get a quality education.
What advice can you offer a student that is wanting to pursue a career in veterinary medicine? And I know that you talk to a lot of students on various topics. And so what can you say to somebody that's thinking about applying?
So I guess it would be different depending on the age level. Really would start thinking about, if students are interested in veterinary medicine high school, really focusing on your math and science classes. Those are going to be really important because you're going to have to take a lot of prerequisites in terms of science classes in college. So always good to really focus on those classes and feel ready for when you take them in college. Definitely, again, trying to make sure you do well in your classes, but also getting involved in things outside so you can make sure you're really well-rounded. And then getting the veterinary and animal experience, making sure this is what you want to do. And then when it comes to animal experience, not just maybe focusing on the species that you are most comfortable with, kind of stepping out of your comfort zone, because at Illinois we will have students working with all the different types of animal species, so you do have to be comfortable being around them, handling them, working with them.
That kind of leads me into my next question is, how significant and important is getting that hands-on experience? Maybe it's in high school, maybe it's during your undergrad work. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean, not that this is not included, going to your local vet's office and talking to the veterinarian there, saying, can I observe, can I work alongside of you? There are so many other experiences, real world hands-on opportunities for students. Can you talk about some of those and what would make a student stand out if they had this in their application?
Sure. So yes, the veterinary office is where most people think that they're going to get their experience. But thinking about your local animal shelters, there are rehabilitation areas for animals. So maybe like exotics wildlife rehabilitation centers. If you have one of those in your area, that would be a great place. You may not be working directly with a veterinarian, but the hands-on animal experience you get there is going to be really good. And even if when you go into, say, your local veterinary office and they say, we don't have a space for you necessarily working side by side with the veterinarian, but we can start you off as maybe a kennel assistant or something like that, that's going to help you get your foot in the door, again, get more of those animal handling skills, and then hopefully work your way up.
When you mentioned that you received, at least this year, more than 2,000 applications, that's a lot of paperwork to go through and to spend time on. How are applications screened when they come through?
Sure. So we have 3 phases that we review applicants. The first is we look at those cumulative GPA and science GPAs. And those are calculated by the application service that students apply through. So we get those from the application service and we rank the students based on their grades. Unfortunately, we have to do that just because of the large number of applications. And so after that, then we go ahead, and the second phase is actually looking at the entire application that the student has provided us. So their personal statement, their references, all of their information on student clubs, animal experience, veterinary experience. And those are read by our admissions committee. And at the end, that'll make up 75% of the student's total score. And then the last is an interview process. So we do have an interview that students will go through. They'll interview, we've been doing it by Zoom the last couple years.
Yes.
They'll interview with a faculty member, an alumni from our program, and a current student, a third or fourth year student. And we will ask them some questions and then give them the opportunity to ask us about our program. And the interview makes up 25% of their final kind of score. So in the final score, we aren't looking at grades anymore, but we do have to use it in that first phase.
What sort of questions do you throw at potential students? You know, I mean, obviously they're spilling their soul in their paperwork telling you, but is there anything in particular when you talk to them face to face, what you're trying to get a feel for?
So I can't tell you the specific
Exact
questions. Yes. Yes, but we're just really trying to get a feeling for who the student is, maybe some ideas of how they handle stressful situations, maybe dealing with conflict, things like that. But yeah, we ask all the students the same questions. So
This must be a long process. I mean, and you don't take this lightly. I mean, it sounds like it's a timely process. How long does it usually take from when all of the applications are gathered to go through all of the documentation, to go through the interviews? It sounds months.
It is months. So applications are usually due sometime mid-September. That's when the application process closes. And then we will do our interviews usually the second week of February. So from September to February is when we're kind of reviewing everything. And then as soon as we get a chance after interviews, we are letting students know. So it's, what is that, 4 or 5 months?
Right, right. What happens if a student applies, their heart is set to go to the U of I, they're up against a lot of competition and they don't end up getting accepted? Do you provide feedback to those students to say, look, maybe next time, maybe focus more on getting a little bit more experience or doing more hands-on, or do you provide them feedback, and can they apply again?
They can definitely apply again. We don't give specific feedback to each person. However, if a student contacts us and just says, hey, can we have a little discussion about my application? What can I do? We can definitely sit down and talk with the students. Another option would be, and you mentioned it earlier before we started actually recording, would be to consider other options that they could work in the veterinary field. And so potentially a veterinary technician. We're definitely looking for veterinary technicians right now in the field everywhere. So maybe there's some other options for them to consider where they can still continue to make a difference in the lives of animals.
Tell us the importance of the role of the veterinary teaching hospital at the U of I, because I think, I've had friends that have taken animals there, and I mean that it saved their pet, by having that hospital available. Tell us about the role that unit plays on campus within the college and how it helps those veterinary students going through the program.
Yeah, the veterinary teaching hospital is a huge part of our college, and it is needed for our veterinary students to really learn how to be veterinarians. So students will enter the veterinary teaching hospital, as I mentioned, in first and second year to do some rotations during that time, but the main time is during their fourth year. So they'll spend their entire fourth year going through rotations either in our veterinary teaching hospital or potentially off campus with veterinarians as well. And they'll rotate through multiple specialties. They'll rotate through a primary care option. So for general practitioners, we have a small animal primary care and an equine primary care rotation. So students will go through that. They'll go through our diagnostic lab rotation as well. But it's really the hands-on time for them to learn how to be a veterinarian and not just the hands-on time with the animals, but also how to communicate with clients, how to communicate with other veterinarians, because they're going to be talking to their fellow students, they're going to be talking with our current clinicians, discussing cases. So just really learning just a lot of different things that it takes to be a veterinarian besides all the knowledge.
You know, one of the things that has simply amazed me being the host of this show and having so many veterinarians from the U of I come on the show, you mentioned specialties, and whoa, there's a lot.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, there's dermatology, there's cardiology, there's oncology. Things that you just don't even think about. You know, when, the person like myself that's not going through vet school, but just all the different areas that people can get involved in. Behavioral, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. One of a memorable episode that we did last year was we visited a doctor who was a chiropractor, and she did chiropractic work on horses. And I mean, that was just, I didn't even know that there was such a thing. So talk about some of the other specialty areas. I know the list is long.
Yeah, the list is long. I couldn't tell you how many there are. But we have a lot of the same equivalent specialties that they have in human medicine. Maybe we don't get as focused, especially in areas like surgery, but there's many that we have. Like I'm a pathologist behind the scenes, but still, part of the process of making the diagnosis for animals and helping them.
Right.
We've got veterinarians, not necessarily a specialty, but we've got veterinarians that work for the USDA, making sure we've got a safe food supply. There's just making sure that, if you've ever heard of the concept of One Health, I'm sure you have, but working to make sure environmental changes, seeing how those affect animals, then how those might affect humans. So it's really just, there's so many different aspects of veterinary medicine you don't even know about until you really, really start to look into it. Yeah.
An important question. So let's talk about from start to finish, how long it takes, where I can call myself a veterinarian.
Sure.
Some other facts, because there's costs that are associated with this. So how easy is it to get a job? How much student debt am I going to have when I get out of school? And what kind of salary can I expect? Because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about salaries when it comes to vets versus human doctors.
Yes. So timeline, if you are completing your undergraduate degree first and then going into veterinary school, it's 8 years for the majority of people. So 4 years for your undergrad, 4 years for veterinary school. Then you can go into general practice if you choose. For someone who wants to specialize, usually it's 1 year then of an internship and 3 years of a residency. So for a specialist, it's 12 years for the majority of them. When it comes to the field or getting a job for veterinary medicine, really good right now. So looking at our, oh gosh, I'm going to forget the name right now.
That's all right. You'll think it'll come to you.
I remember the acronym. It's the AVMA, but remembering that is. So the 2021 economic report for the veterinary profession said that about 94% of students who graduated from veterinary school got a job post-graduation, so really good. For our students who graduated in 2021, the majority of them got 3+ offers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so very, very good time to be graduating with a veterinary degree. When it comes to salary, that's going to vary depending on what field students are going into, as well as where they're located in the country. But kind of average is about $75,000 to $90,000 a year. And then in terms of student debt, so yeah.
6 figures.
Yes, it is. And this is, I'm going to give you a range as well, because the first number includes students who did not report any debt, and then the second number is just students who reported debt. Again, coming from that AVMA survey, $160,000 to $190,000 of debt.
But when you're talking 8 to 12 years of schooling, that adds up.
Yes, it does.
But on the flip side, this profession is very rewarding. Not just for you personally, because you're a vet too, but I mean, when you when you talk to students and you talk to other vets, what is the most rewarding aspect to a career in veterinary medicine, do you think? And it's probably not a one answer. I mean, you probably have story after story of successes that you have personally witnessed in your life. So maybe share with us some of those.
So I spent about a year in practice and then did a little relief work while I was doing my residency. And probably the most rewarding was just hearing from owners just how much of a difference you made in their lives and their pets' lives. I think probably the most rewarding experience during that time was an owner who brought their animal in on emergency, and I presented all the possibilities for care, and she decided, you know, that what I was presenting was too much, and she decided to take her dog home, but she came back the next morning, and I was still on shift because I'd been on overnights. And she asked to speak to me, and she said, you know what? She said, I brought my dog back because, you know, you presented me with all the options, but when I decided to leave, you didn't make me feel bad about it. And I really knew that my dog was going to get good care. And so that was the fact that she had enough confidence in me to bring her dog back for care was
incredible.
I mean, yeah.
A great feeling.
It was a really great feeling.
Well, Dr. Sara Connolly from the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine, it's been a pleasure having this discussion with you. It was fantastic, and you know, I think we probably should have done it a lot sooner because we talk to vets all the time, but we just don't know the process, and it was very enlightening. And if anybody out there has additional questions, the website at the University of Illinois College of Veterinary Medicine is very thorough, and it has all kinds of information on what I need to do to apply.
Yes, and we have specifically on the website, there is a tab for prospective students. So if you want more information, that is the best place to go. It's all there for you.
Perfect, and I hope you'll join us again for another episode down the road.
That would be great.
And that wraps up this episode of the Paw Report. Again, I am your host, Kelly Goodwin, and we'll see you next time.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Power Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com. Additional support for the Paw Report provided from Soggy Paws of Mattoon.